high pitch.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is your host. My name is LaToya Texera, and I'm Mount Calvary's Health Ministries leader. And today we have a special topic. Our topic is creating emotional antibodies for our children. So we have two panel guests with us today. We have Bedwetting, and we have Dr. Sean Allen. You are in for a treat if you have children, that are living during this COVID-19 society. This is something that you will want to tune in for. We also have Dr. Phil Potts today, who will introduce Dr. Allen.
Okay, well, Dr. Allen sent me some notes to introduce her, but I'm just going to wing this one. Sean and I are old friends from college. When I got to Andrews, she and her other sisters took me under their wing, and they were my big sisters. I love her to death. We have been best buds ever since, and our families vacation together. Our children are best friends. Her son and my son are roommates at Andrews. And so I'm just so pleased to have her agree to come on and do this for us. You can take it from me. She is well qualified. She went to Andrews for undergrad, Loma Linda for med school, her residency in adult psychiatry there, and then Emory University for her fellowship in child and adolescent psychiatry. The thing I love about Sean, she loves to laugh, and I just love to push that funny bone. She is great. So I'm going to stop here and just say, please, just listen to whatever she has to share with us, because I'm sure it's going to benefit us all.
And Dr. Allen, before you speak, let me just also introduce Bedwetting, and I should have did that before. But Bedwetting, she is a good friend of mine. She's been working for the Hillsborough County Public School for about the past 14 years, 11 years as a high school teacher, and this is her 4th year as a school counselor. And currently she's working at the Mango Elementary School in Sefner. So we are in for a treat today. I agree with you, Dr. Phil Potts, so let's listen up.
All right. Well, I am so thankful to be here, and I appreciate you all allowing me this opportunity to speak with you. So we're going to talk today just about this experience of COVID and how it has impacted all of us. And this has really been a difficult time for us as adults, but also our children. And it's, even though we're going through this pandemic from a medical standpoint, I strongly believe that we're going to have a mental health epidemic through this as well, because there are just so many different challenges that we all are experiencing, like I said, as adults and as children as we go through these times. So I think it's just real important for us to, gain this information, be kind to ourselves during this time, because we're all experiencing a lot of different emotions and feelings, and our children are experiencing that as well. So I hope through this talk today, we can gain some extra guidance and help that will help us as we continue to go through this time. So I'm going to pull up my PowerPoint presentation now, and then we will discuss these points together. Okay. All right, so as LaToya explained, our topic today is creating emotional antibodies for our children. And I first wanted to just begin by discussing just a few statistics, just general and just a few, but I think it will help us to understand the impact that this is having on our mental health as well. So more than 2 in 5 US residents are reporting that they're struggling with mental or behavioral health issues associated with the COVID-19 pandemic. And among the mental health issues that we will see or are seeing during this time are anxiety, depression, increased substance use or abuse, and suicidal thoughts are on the rise. And these are according to new findings from the CDC. And as it impacts our children, the research is demonstrating that COVID-19 is affecting the mental health of our children and adolescents, with depression and anxiety being the most prevalent. So before I get into talking about children and adolescents, we have to start with the parents, because it's real important for us to make sure that as parents, we are where we need to be with our emotional and mental health as well. So just like, we hear the stories all the time about how before we take a flight, they talk about the oxygen coming down and we need to put it on ourselves first before we put it on our children. That's kind of the same thing that we need to do, especially during this time. We need to make sure that we are in the best place that we can be emotionally and mentally as well, so that we can be able to be present for our families. And as parents, we are the ones that really set the tone in our household. If we're having a high level of anxiety or stress, our kids are going to feel that in different ways. And that's going to set a tone of anxiety and stress in the home. So it's just real important for us to be aware of our mental health and make sure that we are doing all that we can to make sure that we're okay as well. So self-care is real important. I really emphasize this, and in my practice, I am put forth a lot of effort to discuss about the interconnectedness of just our mind, body, and spirit. And it's not just about looking at one aspect and not taking care of the whole. And self-care is a big part of that process. So our physical, our mental, our spiritual health and well-being is important for us as parents, so that we can care for the needs of our family to the best of our ability. One of the programs that I really feel is a good lifestyle change program is the New Start, which is done by our Adventist community in Weimar. And they really look at 8 lifestyle principles and look at incorporating these into our daily life, which helps us not only just medically, but it helps us too with just building our immune systems, which is really important right now in this time of COVID. And just incorporating this into our lives does a lot to help with our mental well-being as well. Like I said, I really emphasize the importance of our physical being, but also our mental health well-being as well. And that's all part of, making sure that we're taking care of our bodies. So the New Start program looks at these, like I said, these 8 principles. And one is nutrition, just making sure that we're getting good diet, good intake of good food. Right now, during this time of COVID too, I'm hearing a lot from my patients and just from friends in general too, that since we're home more, we tend to be kind of grazing a little bit more around foods and stuff at the home, and maybe not always eating the best nutritional diet. So that's really important, especially during this time, like I said, to help build our immunity, to make sure that we're eating a lot of good, healthy food. And that means also limiting sugar intake, because sugar is not our friend in a lot of ways as far as helping with our immune system and our immune tolerance. So we need to make sure that we're eating a healthy diet. Exercise is important, just being able to be getting up and moving. And for those of us that are working from home more now, I know being in front of the computer has become more of an issue now than ever. At least at work, you were more aware of maybe standing up and moving around, getting up, going to lunch, doing that. Now it's kind of in front of the computer all day, and you have to be very mindful of how long you're just sitting there and not getting some movement. So movement and exercise is important. Of course, water, just staying well hydrated and drinking lots of water has always been a good lifestyle program. And then sunlight, getting outside, getting good vitamin D. A lot of us have low vitamin D levels, and vitamin D is also important for our moods and just helping us with how we feel mood-wise as well. Temperance, just being temperate in those things that we're putting into our body and making sure that we're doing things in moderation. And air, again, just going outside, getting good fresh air. And that can be incorporated in your exercise program, maybe walking and being outdoors. Rest and sleep is so very important. And you're going to see in some of my next slides coming up when I talk about how we're interacting with our kids. I'm going to speak a lot about just being patient. And we can't be our most patient self when we're tired. So sleep is very important. And sleep impacts our mood as well. Sometimes, when we're already not feeling well, we're not getting proper rest, we can be a lot more irritable as well. So the irritability can also be a part of some of our mood symptoms. And then our trust is, trusting in God, just being aware that we have a higher power in God and that He's going to see us through everything that we're going through. So incorporating this into our lives, I'm just singling us out as parents right now that all of these different lifestyle changes are very important in just making sure that we're at our best self, and incorporating this with our family and our children is important as well. And as I mentioned, finally, just self-care with us as parents, setting aside time to take care of yourself when possible, seeking support that you may need for your own mental health, exploring relaxation techniques like mindfulness or yoga or stretching. Now is a great time, if some of us are doing more work from home, to try to incorporate some of those things in our lifestyle that maybe when we were, having to have time to get into work and having to think of our commute time and those things that limited our extra time that we had. Now that we have a little bit more, if we're working from home, we can incorporate some exercise in there that we may not have been able to incorporate before. Exploring new hobbies or interests, strengthening our relationship with God, and just spending time in daily gratitude. A lot of times, especially now with this election coming up and all the things that we're bombarded with media-wise, it's hard to lose sight of the things that we have to be grateful and thankful for. And when we take a moment to just pause and do that, it helps us to put everything back into a proper perspective and help us to look at all the things that we do are grateful for, and helps us to change our perspective. And one of the quotes that I have really taken to heart is that when we change the way that we look at things, the things that we look at change. So that perspective is real important. Okay, so now getting into helping our children. When looking at children's coping mechanisms and reactions to stress, we have to look at it through the age cycle and through the age groups, because children and adolescents differ in how they may present with things. Sometimes younger kids tend to present more behaviorally because they might not have the verbal ability to express some of the things that they're feeling. And so we may see more changes in behavior with some of the younger kids. And then with the adolescents, we may see more mood changes with irritability, low frustration tolerance for things, getting into more conflicts with family and friends. And so I'm just going to go through some of the stages, looking at preschool, kind of school age, and then adolescence, and sharing with you some of the reactions that we may see with them, either behaviorally or emotionally or mood-wise, and then ways in which we can help from a parental standpoint. So first of all, let's look at the preschool reactions. So preschool is typically younger kids around ages 3 to 5. And sometimes during times of stress or change, and these are some of the things too we're seeing during this time of the pandemic that we're dealing with right now. Children during this age may express fears of being alone. They may have nightmares, have bad dreams. They may have some difficulties with their ability to be able to speak or share things as clearly as they did before. Sometimes there can be changes with their bedwetting or constipation, not able to go to the bathroom. So they might have been potty trained and been doing well, and then start reverting to having bedwetting episodes again. Sometimes changes in appetite, where they're eating a lot less or more picky with their eating than they were before, or eating a lot more. And like I said, behavior changes is a lot of what you see in this particular age group. So you may see more temper tantrums, more whining, more clinging behaviors, sometimes being afraid to go to maybe different parts of the house or not wanting to be away from a parent where they used to be able to, be able to move away from you fine and be able to do other things, but now they tend to want to stay close. So when we look at that, just how to help parental-wise, like I said, one of the things is to be patient, because as parents, when we're going through a lot too, we're dealing with changes at work and changes in our lifestyle. It's easy when you're noticing kids kind of reverting back to behaviors that you felt like you had been able to have moved through, to kind of go back to that, especially when now you have a lot of other stressors coupled on top of that, can be difficult. But be patient. And this is why I emphasize just making sure you're taking time to take care of you. And provide some verbal and physical reassurance. Just let them know that everything's going to be okay, that you are looking at, what it may be that they're having difficulty with at the time, and trying to help them with navigating that, whatever that particular issue may be then. Encouraging expression. Sometimes in this age group, being able, since verbalizing may be more hard, maybe encouraging expression through play or through drawing. Because sleep may be an issue, this is allowing maybe short-term changes in sleep arrangements. If they are maybe have an older sibling that they may be able to sleep in the room with short-term, those are things that could be as a possibility to help if bedtime especially is a more difficult time and sleeping through the night has become more of a problem. Bedtime for kids this age is very important. So as much as possible, it's really important to stick with a bedtime routine and to try to maintain those routines during this time. So just plan like relaxing activities before going to bed. It may be reading a book together or doing some things together as a family that just can kind of wind down into bedtime. But maintaining a routine is important so that after we eat dinner, there may be time to play, but then after that we do, go through a regular routine of kind of bed, bath, bedtime, so that they're or bath and then brushing your teeth and bedtime, so that they're real clear that there's a routine and a habit that they can be aware of. And then just watch the media exposure, because sometimes we just have the TV going. We may have the TV going and we're listening to things. And the kids at this age too are like sponges. So they're really picking up everything. And so if you're hearing something and you're getting upset by it, or they're hearing something and it's something that may be frightening or scary for them, that's going to add to their level and degree of anxiety and concern as well. So just be very mindful of the media exposure. And that's a good for all of us to be aware of. Okay, so moving on to the school age. In school age, this is looking at ages 6 to 12. So in this age group, we may see more irritability, some whining, sometimes some aggressive behavior. Clinging and nightmares can be an issue during this time as well, and also sleep and appetite changes. Sometimes more physical symptoms, where they'll be complaining of a headache or a stomach ache, and there's not anything medically to really substantiate that. A loss of interest in things that they may have enjoyed before, and they may separate more from their peers than they did before. They may compete for parents' attention if you have other siblings, and especially younger siblings that you may be having to pay more attention to for whatever reason. They may try to compete for your attention. And they may not be as helpful with things around the house as they used to be, or have difficulty more with school. So school changes is a big one too. So if And this is difficult because for our kids who are doing virtual learning, some kids are just having a more difficult time with virtual learning, period, because it's not for every child. And so we just have to take into account too that, you know, there's a lot of changes with how they're learning now. So those are important to be aware of as well, and making sure we're giving them that extra support with the change in learning style that they may be experiencing with their schooling right now. Okay, and with the school age, how to help as parents, again, being patient, helping them to stay connected with their friends, especially when they're getting into that 11, 12, 10, 11, 12-year-old stage where they have the need for more peer interaction, trying to see if they can continue to stay connected through, you know, the internet with FaceTime or doing things together safely with their friends. Regular exercise is good, keeping on top of educational activities. If there's things that they're maybe struggling with, maybe extra things that are educational activities that they can do to help boost the support that they may not be getting as much from school right now from one-on-one teacher interaction. Participating in structured household chores. This is mainly what I'm talking about with this, is just kind of staying with a routine. If they had chores before, try to continue to make that part, you know, keep that routine going for them, because that routine and familiarity is real important right now, especially when we're going through so many changes externally and in our community and environment right now. Be gentle, but stay firm with your limits. Answer questions. At this age, they may have more direct questions about the virus, and it's okay to talk about it and just talk to them about some of the concerns and questions they may have. You know, there may be a lot of concerns about getting sick and, you know, concerns about what that will, you know, what does that mean down the road after contracting it. And I think the important thing too is just to emphasize what we're doing for prevention and how important it is to make sure that we're doing what we can to prevent getting the virus. So making sure that we're washing our hands, making sure that we're staying safe when we go out in public, making sure that we're taking care of ourselves by eating well and getting our exercise and our rest. That all incorporates into doing what we can to make sure that we're staying as healthy as we can. And then still encourage, doctors are still working, people are still researching and working to help find a vaccine. It's just going to take some time. So these are the things that we can do now to make sure that we stay safe. Encouraging expression through play and conversation is good during this time. And again, like I said before, just watching that, limiting media exposure, especially in this age group, because this age group is getting more into the phone and now having more interaction on the phone. So we really have to monitor what they're taking in from the media standpoint. Okay, and finally in the adolescent population, this is for ages 13 to 18. During this time, what we may see are how stressors may present for them physically and emotionally, because physical symptoms like headaches, sleep and appetite disturbance, agitation or decrease in energy or apathy. Irritability is a big one with adolescents. I know I have some of my parents say, how do you know that's any different than how they are normally? But this is normal, you know, more so than their baseline. Ignoring their hygiene, isolating more from peers and loved ones. During this time, they're seeing a lot of the social injustices that are going on, and then just some of the other issues that are happening politically, maybe things that they are also being impacted by. So that's good to, during this age group as well, just be able to have good conversations with them about any questions that they may have, and to kind of just discuss those issues as they come up with them very simply and honestly. Also concerns during this age group is just avoiding school or decreased interest in school and anxiety. Sometimes they can have just feeling really anxious and very worried about things more so than usual. And how we can help during this time to just being patient, again, maintaining routines, which is important for kids of all age groups. Just really important for them to have a regular kind of schedule during their day, I know if they're doing a lot of virtual work now, still maintaining a schedule of when they're getting up, when they're doing their online school, which is probably usually a little bit more structured, and then how they're doing homework in their evenings and bedtime is real important. Be open to having discussions with especially the school age, older and adolescents who may have more questions about different things regarding the pandemic right now. Keeping in touch through the internet, through telephone. Some kids are doing things with video games. Is important to just maintain the connection with their friends, and keeping involved in the family routines. And this time too, I think with the family and being able to be now having some changes in our routine may, for some families, allow more time to have some family time. So utilize this time as well. Do things together more as a family when you have those opportunities, and incorporate that into your daily routine for your children as well. It gives you an opportunity to kind of get a good feed as to where they are in their headspace with things, and gives them a time to just bond together as a family. And then, of course, again, as we talked about before, especially in this age group too, is limiting the media exposure. Sorry. Okay, so just speaking a little bit more about just parenting through the pandemic. Addressing the children's fears, as I talked about before, just answering questions about the pandemic simply and honestly, kind of correlating it to the age group. The younger age kids, it's really emphasis just on, what we're doing to try to stay healthy with the hand washing and wearing our masks and those things. Older age kids may start having more questions about it, and just be guided by the questions that they have, and follow through with giving them, honest answers with the questions that they may have around it. And I think the older kids too, I know with, as things lifted some and they're able to go out with their friends and, wanting to move more, just having those discussions too about, having to be careful about the movement still, because when you come home, still bringing those issues home, you still have to be concerned about making anyone sick in the home, especially if you have grandparents and other people living in your home as well. You have to be very mindful about that. So addressing the children's fears, recognizing your child's feelings, keeping in touch with loved ones. As I said, as parents, we model a lot about our feelings to our children. So we have to, make sure how we're managing our emotions around things as well, because we're modeling a lot of our behavior is being modeled a lot to them, and they're learning from us how to manage and navigate some of these different emotions and feelings right now. For some children, especially younger children, if you're leaving and going away, even going to run errands and those things, it's good to just kind of let them know, okay, I'm running to the store, I'm going to be safe. And when you're coming back, if you know that your child may have some anxiety about you leaving and coming back. So it's good to just kind of give those just extra prompts about those things if you notice that your child is a little more anxious or nervous about things and about you going out. Keep looking forward, stay positive. Always stay positive in your interactions with your kids around this. That builds a lot of resilience in them too, when they know that, okay, things are difficult now, but we're going to keep being positive and doing what we can to stay healthy. And just offer extra love and support during this time, which is really important. Like as I spoke about before, keeping healthy routines, structure your day. Structure is real important for all of us, just to know what to expect throughout the course of the day. But this is really important for children and adolescents during this time. And keeping those bedtimes as consistent as possible is really important. Like I said, with bedtimes are important, especially for the younger ones with a routine. So having family time and reading time before going to bed can be a way of making it fun, but also, and maybe taking some of the anxiety around bedtime, which can occur sometimes in younger children before going to bed. And always recommend turning off those cell phones and media devices at least an hour before bedtime in order to get good sleep. Just a few more points to remember. Just avoiding physical punishment, encourage not to, sometimes as we get frustrated and angry, sometimes our discipline, we may feel really frustrated during this time. So just avoid physical punishment. Just know with aggressive behavior that can come out in our children as well. So just take time to just take a time out for yourself if you're feeling like you're feeling overwhelmed. Take a breath, look at the problem, see how difficult the problem is at the moment, and just stop and regroup. Is this something that is as big of an issue as I think it is? Is it something that I just need to stop and maybe break it down into smaller steps versus big steps? How can I manage this and not have it overwhelm me so much? And sometimes when we can just take a moment to stop and maybe even remove ourselves from the situation for a moment before we come back in can be helpful. During this time, it's good to try to set aside some special time for your kids. If you have kids of different age groups, sometimes allotting a time during the week where you can just do time specifically with them helps them to feel special, that they have your undivided attention. And it just also allows you some time to find out how your kids are doing individually. And so if you know an interest that your child may have, this would be a good time to maybe just say you're going to set aside time to do whatever they may be interested in with your younger kids, if it's coloring, if it's playing a game, cooking, reading a book with them. For your older teens, if it's doing something that they enjoy doing or finding out or having just talk time. Just set aside that time, put the cell phones away, just let them know that you are giving them your undivided attention in this special time. Even if it's 15 to 20 minutes will mean more than you know, that they just have your undivided attention and that you're giving them this time, and they feel that they can just talk with you and you can have an opportunity to really find out with them one-on-one how they're doing. Positive discipline. These are just some ideas too for some of the younger kids, using positive responses to some behavioral issues that may come up, redirecting bad behavior. Sometimes your kids may be doing, especially the younger ones, may be doing some behaviors that are irritating, but they may be doing it more for attention at the time because they're feeling like they're not being listened to or being paid attention to, or they're just bored. So sometimes it's just engaging them in an activity, which may be helpful to kind of help redirect them from what they may be doing at the moment. Any kind of creative play, sometimes getting involved with doing things with them more creatively, where you can put a play together or reenact something that you read in a book. Just use your imagination and let your younger kids' imagination run wild with some of the things that they can do. Like I mentioned before, just direct your attention to them. Sometimes and giving them that one-on-one time. Sometimes rewards and privileges, if you're having certain behaviors that are coming up more frequently. Sometimes if they know so that, if I completed this chore, or if I'm able to get to bed on time and I'm able to sleep through the night without coming into the room or doing something else like that, you can give them a reward for that they can, that kind of helps to reinforce the positive behavior. Know when not to respond. Some actions and behaviors, as long as they're not doing anything to hurt themselves and there's not anything that's going to come of it. Sometimes not responding to something can eliminate that behavior versus giving it a lot of attention. And timeouts is typically for what we do sometimes for the younger kids. Is when they just need a moment to just kind of have a time away from the group to regroup. And typically what we say is a minute per year of age. And this can sometimes help with the younger kids if they just seem to be spiraling at the moment and need a moment away from the group in order to reboot. I want to just before I end, just say some red flags, though, to watch out for in our older children and our adolescents, because I think it's important during this time to just make sure that mood symptoms and mood behaviors aren't worsening. And so some of the red flags in older children and adolescents, and I would say typically if you're seeing this consistently for like 2 weeks or more, and over a course of a month for sure, if you notice that they're consistently having changes in their mood where they're irritable, they're having feelings of hopelessness or anger, having frequent conflicts, not only with the family, but with friends, changes in behavior where they're stepping back from relationships that they used to be very engaged in, or have little interest in doing those things that they used to enjoy, like texting or video chatting and those things. Loss of interest in things that they used to enjoy, as I mentioned, any sleep disturbance, and this can be difficulty getting to sleep or staying asleep, or sleeping a lot more than they usually do, just not wanting to get up and having to really push them to get up to even get ready to engage in their schoolwork. Changes in their eating habits where they're eating a whole lot more or eating a lot less than normal, poor concentration, not doing well in their schoolwork, and poor hygiene. These are just indicators that maybe there's more there that we need to just be mindful of, and that we need to look into if this is happening consistently. Typically, like I said, we'll say for 2 weeks or longer, where this is just a consistent change. Kids may have, and adolescents may have, these peaks and valleys with it that may occur just as a result of, like I said, of what we're going through. But typically, if they're able to, engage in something else or do something else, and then they see that their mood picks back up, not so much of a concern. But it seems like if you're still trying to engage them and trying to encourage them in doing some activities and doing things, and they just don't have that desire, or still having that degree of irritability, those are things that we need to be concerned about and want to, make sure that nothing else deeper is going on, like depression. Other behavioral issues to just be aware of or to look at as warning signs is an increase in risky or reckless behavior. And this can be anything from using drugs or alcohol, or just doing more impulsive behavior that they normally didn't do before. Thoughts about death or suicide. The rates of suicide for both adolescents and young adults increases during times of stress. So we have to be aware of that. And anytime there's a talk about suicide, we need to take that seriously. So if you have concerns about that, and if your child is not involved in mental health services, even with your current primary care provider, you can let them know of your concerns, and they can help in directing you further if they feel like they would benefit from an evaluation. So in closing, just with encouraging everyone during this time with just keeping the calm. For right now, we just show yourself and others loving kindness during this difficult time. We are all going to have moments where we have ups and downs and highs and lows through this. We need to make sure that we are engaging and staying engaged with our family and our friends. When we know that we're having a moment, we need to make sure that we're taking good self-care of ourselves. It might be getting up from the computer, just going out and taking a walk for 5 minutes or so and coming back and regrouping, but just show yourself loving kindness, because it's difficult. This has been unprecedented times. And so we just need to be really loving and caring towards ourselves right now. And it's important to help our children feel safe, keep up with our healthy routines. Our children rely on us a lot for their physical and emotional safety. So we just need to make sure that we're doing all that we can to take care of ourselves so that we can pour good love and hope into them. And I wanted to just say too, just about resiliency during this time, because I think this is a time, resilience is something I've noticed in this generation of young people is not always as prevalent, even before we have this pandemic. But I think it's something that's very important. Resiliency is very important, just to, not give up when things are not going their way, to not give up when, or feel frustrated, or just say, I can't do it when you hit a rough spot. And I think now more than ever, here's a situation that we can't control, and we have definitely hit some rough spots. So this is a beautiful time for us to be able to just share with our children about, even though it's rough, we're in this together, we're going to make it through. And even though we're having a difficult time now, we can rise above this. And so there's good lessons to be learned during this time of just resilience, and showing that, it's more than just not giving up, but it's adapting, it's growing, it's becoming stronger during this time. It's learning more ways of coping and making it through this so that we can be stronger and better on the other side. So I'm leaving with a text from Lamentations that said, the steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. They are new every morning, and that great is your faithfulness. So through this process, we know that we are not alone. As parents, sometimes we may feel like we're at the end of our rope too, but we remember that we are not alone, and that's what we have to pour into our children as well, so that we can have a great testimony at the other side of this when we get on the other side of all of the issues we've been experiencing here in 2020. So I know we have another speaker, so I will be willing to open up for any questions or anything afterwards. And thank you for giving me your time.
Thank you, Dr. Allen. I really like that verse that said, the steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. So we know through him, he's got us. So
yeah, he's got us.
Never ceases. There was one question. The person on YouTube said, maybe I missed it, but what would you suggest as best activities for the whole family to ensure mental health? I think you did go over that, but if you don't mind just giving a suggestion of the best activities for the whole family to ensure mental health.
Oh, wow. Well, I think that can run the gamut. That can extend to everything from, doing activities outside together as a family, and doing things together as a family, playing board games, watching things together as a family. I think whatever your interests are, family-wise, is good to incorporate it together as a family. And if you have younger to older kids, allowing each one of them to even decide kind of what the family will do for that week or for that day, or, for over the weekend. I like to incorporate, I think it's always good to incorporate the physical, the mental, the spiritual. So, having that time collectively, if you have more time together now to do devotional times together, sometimes that is a push when we're in our hectic daily lives going to and fro. So incorporate those times to do devotionals together as a family and worshiping together as a family. Doing activities outside together as a family, whether it's exercising or walking, playing outside, doing board games, eating together as a family is a wonderful activity too. And you learn a lot about just talking at the dinner table around those things that are happening. And all of these things are also impacting mental health. You may not see it specifically as a mental health activity, but it is all incorporating mental health. You're learning how to love each other. You're learning how to listen to each other as others are talking. You're learning how to understand your emotions and feelings about things. If that's a time for you as parents, if they're talking about feeling sad or angry, how you can even talk about, I feel that way too, and how you deal and cope with that. That's helping them as young people to learn how to manage their emotions. So all of those things are ways of engaging through family activities that are definitely helping to boost your mental health during this time as well.
Thank you, Dr. Allen. This question is a two-part question. It is for Marvette and Dr. Allen. Dr. Allen, have you seen any children in your practice that have gone through some emotional stress during this COVID time? And
Definitely.
and then for Marvette, as you being a school counselor, I'm sure you're working with our children every day. So share with us what you've seen, even on the school and education side.
Well, one of the biggest things that I've noticed, or the biggest impact, is the gap that we now have with our academics. You know, of course, our students were out of school for many months, and, you know, a lot of them, especially for my population, you know, we have over 90% poverty rate at my school in Mingo. And a lot of our students just did not have that access for the internet. Some of them just did not have the help at home to get online and, you know, to stay on top of things. You know, when we first got out of school, it wasn't very rigorous what we expected of them because it was so new for everyone, and we didn't want to put too much pressure on everyone. And so it was more of, if you attended Zoom session once for the week, basically it meant that you were present at school. And so we had a lot of students who just did not get on. A lot of our parents did not see the value of getting on. And so again, that academic gap has just widened. 40% or so of our students are English language learners, and they already have that they're, you know, working toward. And then, you know, a lot of their families don't speak English. And so it's just been a real struggle. And so we have what we call a multi-tier system of support for teaching our students. And so we have tier 1, which is what we give to everyone. And then tier 2 is a little more intensive for those students who might need a little more focused instruction. And then we have tier 3 for even more focus. And so we find that what we would normally be giving to students for tier 2, we're now doing that for everybody. It's now considered tier 1 because so many of them are so low. They are, you know, behind in such a great way that we now have to kind of back up and try to make sure that we are catching them up to make sure they can be successful. So that's the biggest impact that I've seen.
Would you say that it's impacted them emotionally or their mental state?
Oh, definitely. That's definitely there as well. You know, a lot of them now, they're back in school. Some of them, they don't really want to be there. You know, you do have the fear. You have a lot of parents who are fearful, and so they're not sending their kids back to school because they're worried, and they're still not making sure they do what they need to do at home either. So we recently had a student in our office who he refused to wear his mask. He's a second grader, and he just would not wear it. He said, you know, his parents did not really require him to wear the mask, and so he didn't. And he was just so stressed and struggling that he threatened to kill himself, you know. And, you know, I'm sure that was probably pretty surface because a lot of our elementary students, they are quick to make statements that they don't really mean. But of course, we have to take everyone very seriously and try to get to the bottom of it and make sure that we are communicating those concerns with parents. And so we do have, you know, those types of things that are happening. The county, Hillsborough County, has, you know, been very vigilant, I think, especially now with making sure our teachers are more informed about mental health, you know, especially with everything that's been going on even before COVID. So just so they can know some of the signs, they are required to take mental health courses so that they, again, can just notice if something is going on that they need to bring to the attention of, say, our student services office. And so, you know, we make sure they understand the importance of not making these students feel judged or, you know, feel any kind of limited way because they're having or experiencing these feelings, and to make sure they get to us that information so we can help them as best that we can. But yeah, it is definitely requiring a lot more of us to be more mindful, to be more vigilant in paying attention to their behaviors, paying attention to whether or not, I know Dr. Ellen talked about some of the behaviors that you may see and whether or not they may be considered normal or, something else is going on. And so we have to be mindful, is this just normal average behavior, or is there something else that's really contributing to what's happening with these students? And so that has been a big push of making sure we look for that, having teachers look for that. Some of the things that Dr. Allen talked about, making sure that, what to do to try to combat what they're experiencing. We are definitely doing that at school. Like, we are so much more involved in making sure we create community in the classroom. We have, at my school particularly, we have a 20 minutes every day where we have what we call leader and me time, but they basically get together and they can talk about what they're experiencing. We are really concerned about the whole child. And so we understand that there's little that we can do as far as educating them in reading and math and whatever, if they are not in the right place mentally. And so we are very vigilant about making sure we have those opportunities for our students to express themselves. We have teachers who, have like a check-in every morning, like, where are you? I'm okay, I'm feeling sad about something, and the students can go and kind of identify where they are. And some, even one that say, I need to talk to you right now. And so we're creating a safe environment for these students to feel like, yes, I can go and say where I am right now in this situation, so that, they can get the help that they need. So it's definitely been a change.
Oh, thank you, Marvette. I think sometimes we forget what an impact of COVID-19 and the kids being out of school and having to do all the social distancing has really done to them. So, Dr. Allen, have you actually seen children come in your practice who have really been affected with COVID-19, and not in terms of them having COVID-19, but the impact and the emotional stress of it?
Most definitely. I think, and there's even been I've definitely seen a change as we've gone through the cycle of it. At the beginning, kids were kind of excited they're out of school, and then we kind of went into the summer. And so, but now coming back into a new school year, it's definitely been a challenge. And here in Georgia, because I'm here in Atlanta, we're still, a lot of the students are still out of school. So we've had a lot of challenges with virtual learning and, parents having to try to help their child through the virtual learning process, which is difficult. And so it's been an experience. So yeah, and then the students are having to adjust to being at home, where they used to were like, you come home from school and you kind of have a break and downtime. Now they're at home, and now it's also school, but I'm at home. And so they're wanting to kind of do all the things that they can get distracted with at home, and parents are having to kind of reel them back in to say, no, this is school time. So it's definitely been a challenge. And I think with that, I've just seen some of the anxiety. I think what Marvette spoke about speaks to, especially sometimes the young kids will just go, oh, I just want to kill myself, because it's more of just, they're frustrated and they're, angry and kind of upset about a situation, and they're not really wanting to kill themselves. But, you have to talk about that further and just kind of get down into really what the emotion is behind that. And so we really, again, it's about patience. It's about finding out more about what the emotions are underneath that. It's helping the child reframe that about, I don't want to really kill myself, but I'm really angry right now. So what can we do to kind of help through what I'm feeling right now? So what is some alternatives? What are some other options I can do or say when I'm feeling this way? Versus saying I want to kill myself. So yeah, we're seeing a lot more of that anxiety, which, like I said before, comes out in a lot of different ways behaviorally, and then what may come out verbally for some of the older students who can verbalize some of those frustrations. And and some just some depression, and then just some sadness with it, because they hate that they can't move like they used to. You know, they'd like to be able to be done with school and go outside and play. And some parents, especially parents with underlying health conditions and issues, are not as open to allowing that to happen because they're concerned about their interactions outside. So there's been a lot of changes. And so it's just definitely seeing more of that happening now as they're coming back into a school situation, which is at home, and having to adjust to a lot of those changes. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Allen. Are there like any resources or anything that we can maybe give our parents to take away from all of this, or resources if they need extra help with their children?
Yeah, so I sent some through to you as well, Latoya, that I have as handouts or information sheets that you can give and send through email for them, that gives them information regarding parenting tips for parents, parenting tips regarding different behavioral issues. Also gives you some resources regarding apps that do some mindfulness and relaxation that can be helpful for everyone in the family. So it gave you those as well, and some additional information regarding how to build resilience in our kids during this time, and just giving you feedback and some information regarding tips for how to manage some of the questions that kids may have around that. So I included that with this as well. I did have some, I'll go back and show you on the resources page, even of my PowerPoint, that you can take with you as well and utilize.
I have a quick question. Marvette and Sean, are you seeing the impact of COVID on the economy and people losing jobs and not being able to cover their children's insurance or medical costs of medicines and things like that? Are you seeing that play out at work, at school, and in the practice?
Well, a lot of our kids, their families probably have Medicaid. So as far as losing their insurance, that's not a big aspect, but a lot of them, they have to work, and that they didn't have that ability to stay home with their kids because they are, say, like the sole provider for their children. And a lot of these kids unfortunately end up being at home alone. I was recently speaking with a 4th grader, and I know he has a 2nd grade brother and then a sister who's, I think, was 4. And he was initially started out with e-learning. He was learning from home. And then he said, and then my mom decided we have to go back because my brother kept getting in trouble because we were home alone. And I was so shocked, because you have a 4-year-old, a 9-year-old, and like an 8-year-old staying home alone. Mm-hmm. And so, and that happens all the time. I had another student who was a 3rd grader, and I reached out to his teacher because we needed to meet. And she said to me, well, I've never seen this kid. This is another student who was doing the e-learning. And she said, I've never seen him. So of course we reached out to mom, and she, again, a single mom going to work, and was under the impression that her children were logging into Zoom and doing what they're supposed to do. She said, oh, he's on the computer. And again, also her English is limited. So in her mind, my children are home and they're doing what they're supposed to do. And in actuality, they're home just playing games and doing things like that. And so she had to end up sending them back to school. So that's kind of more of what we're seeing with a lot of our students are unsupervised. And just get into all manner of things because their parents cannot afford to be there with them, but they're also fearful that if they return to school, maybe contract COVID and bring it home, and then you have that fear and worry. So it's just, so we have a lot more of them trickling back in now, because a lot of them, like I said before, the requirement for really doing e-learning when we first got out in the spring, is completely different now when they return to school in August. So now it's like a regular school day. They're required to be on Zoom with their teacher all day. And so that's a shift from what they were used to before summer break. So now a lot of the parents are seeing, okay, I'm not able to really handle this at home. Some of the things that, is required of my child, I'm not able to help them with. A lot of our students, who are receiving exceptional education, they are not getting those services, or if they are, it's very different on Zoom. So we have a lot of them that are now returning because of those things that are happening in their lives. Yeah.
Yeah, and I have, I work at my private practice, but I also work at a community mental health center. And so that population is also on Medicaid. And so I haven't had a break in services at all from that standpoint. And I really haven't with my private practice to date yet either. But what I am finding with my population with the community mental health is similar to what Marvette was saying. It's just that, their parents have to work or in a single parent home. Or I have, some grandparents who are taking care of their, younger kids as well. And they're just trying to manage the virtual platforms. It's a lot. And it's, they can't even, I have parents tell me all the time, they said it's like 4 or 5 different platforms we have to go on to just try to get their lessons. And a lot of these parents are struggling with that. Grandparents are definitely struggling with that. And then the kids are all over the place and not having, that kind of structure, not knowing how to get onto the class. I have one student who says he hasn't even been able to log on since school started. And so he's so far behind right now. It's hard. Yeah, it's just difficult. So not seeing a break in services at this point, but I really do have a big concern about how these poor kids are learning during this time and just the toll it's taking on their families. And, families that have to work and have to go out and earn a living. And, a lot of extra support on, extra pressure on grandparents and stuff too, who are trying to figure out, how to do some of these lessons. And it's really hard. And those students that do need special additional services on top of, their educational services, they might have special education services. A lot of them aren't getting those supports either. So that's been a big problem. So
I've also noticed that, even if they are getting on, sometimes the dynamic of their home is so chaotic.
Yes. Yes.
You get on Zoom with them and the background, when they get off mute, it is so loud and distracting. You're wondering, how can they possibly learn in this environment?
Yes.
So it's affecting in a number of ways.
Yes.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
I got 2 questions from YouTube. The first question is, for children who are attending school virtually, how much time should a child spend in front of the screen?
Oh boy. Well, I don't know if there's necessarily a prescribed time, at least that I'm aware of. But definitely we do not want them sitting in front of that computer for, too long, because, Dr. Ellen talked about some of the impact of that as well, just being in front of that screen. So as I was saying before, they are still kind of in school per se. So they still do have to get on Zoom. And, what I've noticed with what's happening in our school, they will have a whole group instruction sitting in front of the teacher. And then when they go off to do individual work, then they're off Zoom. So they're not in front of the monitor necessarily working on that. For those students with when they have specials like art or PE and so on, they again are able to get off and, they will have an activity they will have to complete that's again not requiring them to sit in front of that monitor. So there are definitely, making sure that they are not sitting in front of that monitor all day long. But it's still a great deal of time. for them sitting there.
Yeah, and I would just add, I think it's I think it's hard to say how much time they should have in front of that, based because I just know in talking to my patients and their parents, it just seems to be dependent on what the teacher is having them do and what their school day is like. So I'll have some students that are on, for maybe 2 hours, and then they're off for an hour and a half, but then they come back on for another 2, and then they're done for the day. Or so, I would just, as parents, just be well aware of what their schedule is, like what their days are scheduled out to be, and just looking at when they may have those breaks in their schedule, and making sure they're doing that. Because even sometimes if they're breaking from the regular big class, I've heard some then go into a group chat, something with another group, and they're still on Zoom, but they're doing something with a smaller group. So I think it's real dependent on what your teachers are doing, and then just making sure that you're aware of what that schedule looks like.
Okay, thank you. There was another question. It said, how much media should the child be allowed to engage in other than school?
You want my personal opinion?
Yes, I'm not a parent, so
I think, again, we just have to, I personally don't feel like during the school week, there's really much of anything on TV they really need to be watching during that time. I think there's other things that they can utilize with, their, and I think you have to look at the age of your kids too, and what it is that what they're watching. So, if they have a break, from homework and those things, I think it might not necessarily be TV. It may be, something on their, that they can just do play outside of that instead of necessarily watching TV. So I don't know. I as far as specifics with that, I don't think anything, I think looking at the age group, I don't think anything more than an hour or so during the week is I think is more than enough, because there's just so many other activities and things that they could be doing and engaging in that I think is important. I think reading is very important, and enjoying books is really important. So from that standpoint, I think the limiting the amount of media that they're watching during the week especially is important, and during a school week, it doesn't need to be any more than that. And I have some parents that just say we're not doing media time at all during the week, period. And on the weekend, maybe they can have movie time and do some other things on the weekend. Especially if your kids are struggling with things like reading and those things, I think it's just it's really important to encourage the books and the reading and getting enjoyment from other healthy avenues versus having to watch it all on TV. So I feel as limited amount of the media as possible. And right now, there's really not a whole lot that's good on there right now anyway. So at the most during the week, I would say if they're doing it for the day, maybe up to an hour, and then getting into homework. I just find that kids have a lot of homework and stuff these days too. So a limited amount of the TV watching and getting into the homework and the things that they have to do is important.
Yeah, I would just add, I'm not a psychiatrist or anything like that, but usually your school year begins and you're supposed to go to school with a physical exam being done and your eyes being tested. And as an ophthalmologist, I would suggest that people make sure, because they probably don't emphasize it now, but make sure your children get their eyes tested, because if they're complaining of headaches looking at the computer all day, it could be that they're hyperopic and they need to be wearing glasses, whereas before when they're in the classroom, they could see just fine in the distance. So that's something to consider also. Also, make sure that when you're looking at the computer all day that you have the blue filter on the screen to cut down on ultraviolet radiation. And then back to what Sean said, I would think with them sitting at the computer all day, it'd be very, very important for them to get scheduled time to be outside, maybe team up with some other parents in the neighborhood and have outside playtime and make sure they're getting some exercise. And then just the last thing I'll say is keep in mind that Bezos and Gates and all these people, they've come out and said that they prevent their children from having all the tech that they've manufactured themselves. They're totally against it, and that they themselves restrict having tech in their homes up until the kids are almost off to college. They think it's ruining the children of America. So that's my 2 cents, and I'll turn my mic off.
No, I think it's important, and I also want to say that's why I'm just like so like, and I think it was great about going outside and running around and exercising. That's awesome, especially now when they're caught up on the laptops all day. But I think the other thing too that it's doing for our kids is when we just have them sitting aimlessly watching these things, it's really impacting their ability to communicate effectively, and that's something that we're just really losing sight of. When they're in front of the TV, it's like everything around them is obsolete. You could talk to them, the house could be burning, and they're going to just be sitting there with that. And I think we have to look at that and really see, is that what we want from our kids? Is that how we want our kids to interact? So that's why I'm just saying, I think it's real. I say very limited, and I wouldn't do more in an hour. And I would say, and I would even try not to do that. Just engage, talk, communicate. That's what's going to be real important for young people right now, because these phones, especially with our, well, I'm going to say older in adolescence, but I just had a parent tell me this past week that somebody got their 9-year-old or 8-year-old a phone, in which I'm just like, for what purpose? I don't understand. But this is what we are, coming into, and then they're so, if you take it away, they're tantruming and they can't function, and they are truly having a psychotic break. And there's something to say about that, so we can't, I think we have to really be mindful of what we're doing to our kids in this tech age and this, TV age and all the other things that we're doing. We just need to get back to basics, just learning how to talk with each other and communicate to each other, reading a book, and just going outside and exercising. We just need to have that part of our childhood versus being in front of something of a monitor all day long. And I'll say too about what Brian said about that. My 6-year-old nephew is visiting with us, and my brother FaceTimed me with him, and he was doing this like tics with his eyes, and we'd never seen that happen with him before. And he went to his pediatrician, and he had to get these special glasses to wear in front of on the laptop when he's on his laptop, because it was just, being in front of the laptop too much and having those kinds of that response to it with his eyes. And since he's done that and had that kind of blue light reflection with it, it's definitely helped. But yeah, we need to be aware of all of that with our kids, like on top of on these things so much all the time, because it's definitely having some physical impacts.
Any other comments or questions? I saw one question on YouTube, but you guys pretty much answered it. It said, would the panel say that reading is the #1 learning tool?
Oh yeah,
it's the #1 learning tool, but it's definitely a benefit. Definitely.
It builds their vocabulary. It just, and I think it helps with creativity. It's wonderful. And I think we don't put enough emphasis on it in our age of technology. And I think it's real important, and can definitely help them in a lot of different areas of their academics. So having that love for books and knowledge is paramount in my book.
Marvette, were there any resources for the Hillsborough County area for parents that you know of?
There are different things on the school website. So if you just go to Hillsborough County website, you will find there are resources that are there.
And Dr. Allen, the information you left, I will send it out to the church website so that way everyone can see that information.
Okay. Okay. And if anyone wants access to the PowerPoint, and I had some resources on the PowerPoint as well. So, and I don't think I hovered over that while I was at the end of my talk, but there's some resources on there and then what I sent you. So,
okay.
And if you need to reach out to me about anything else or any other questions that have come up and they have resources, need some additional resources, just let me know.
Okay.
I'll be more than happy to.
Record it. So everyone, all of Mount Calvary and anyone else can come and view it as many times as they want.
Okay, great, great.
Awesome.
Awesome.
I guess we are concluding this talk on creating emotional antibodies for our children. And we know that our children mean a lot. They're important. And when we take the time to learn about our children and to give them a voice, we will be able to really dive deep into what they really need and want.
Mm-hmm.
At this time, Dr. Philpotts, can you close us out with prayer?
Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for your love. We thank you for your Son and your ultimate gift of eternal life. Thank you for our guest speakers. I ask that you will bless them with a special blessing today and throughout this week and their families. Be with our membership and all those that tuned in. I pray that this information will help to have them navigate through this terrible time that we're going through right now in a more steadfast way, and that it helps them guide their children and raise their children as you would have them to. And continue to be with us and keep us. Be with us until we come back together again at your appointed time. This is my prayer in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you all.